Welcome. This is Daniel Posney, and this is called Shifting Perspectives. And today we're talking about fixing not being heard. And it kind of pairs up a little bit with speaking your truth, but there's some things in there that will be common to that. So, first of all, I just want to acknowledge what it feels like not to be heard. And it can be really agonizing, and actually, it can be life threatening that you were abused or something was happening to you and no one believed you, and so it's got this story of not being heard, and that can kind of run in you like a program and just compound on itself, and it's just a very agonizing feeling that runs inside, like I'm going to try and do this, I'm going to speak here, I'm going to speak my truth, whatever, but there's an inside thing that says, but I've not been heard in the past. So am I going to finally get this acknowledged? Am I going to finally be heard? So it can be kind of this sideways kind of thing where I'm going to go and do this. Oh, there it is again. I wasn't heard. So it's really helpful just to kind of get some real truth around this. And I just had a session with a couple the other day, and she really had the whole not being heard in a really big way. She had a very traumatic childhood. She was part of a foster home and abused, and then just a crazy story that you like would belong in a movie. And so she had this thing going on where she's not heard. And the way that it showed up was she attracted this guy, and he seemed a nice guy. But the way that she would talk is very aggressive and just very, just talking a lot, and not allowing him to get a word in. And she would tell all the details about the story and about how it affected their childhood. And so it's kind of like she's trying to get this getting heard over years of trying to do this. And you get the feeling like even if I were to repeat back to her the whole story and know her feelings, she'd still go, yeah. And then and she would go into another story. So it's kind of like it became this identity that she wasn't ready to let go of. Like, who am I if I don't need to tell this story over and over again and try and get this thing met? So, and at the same time, I'm reading this book called The Pathwork of Self Transformation, and it's talking about this concept called um, forcing current. And what they're talking about is that we have these real, very real needs as a child, and it's like safety, food, shelter, pleasure. And as a baby, we're completely reliant on the outside to get those things. And if we get the idea, if our developing mind gets the idea that we didn't get that thing, like maybe I'm crying, but my mother is on the phone and so she can't tend to me. So the mind picks up on that and creates something from that. And that's where the identity of that story comes in. So then this turns into more of a false need, not a real need. And that develops in the psyche to say, I need this thing, which I'm completely determined to get from the outside. Someone is going to give this to me. And that person starts to grow up and get into a relationship with this inner thing that says, you must. You must give me this love. You must give me your ear. You must hear what I'm saying. And of course, people don't, give it to you all the time. And on top of that, what they call this forcing current is this current of um, actually sabotaging what it is that you want. So, like what this woman was doing, is she was talking in such a way that all the guy could do was, yeah, well, yeah, 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 okay, yeah, but so he could never get a word in, and he just got so exhausted with just hearing the whole story that he says, yeah, well, you know, which goes back to her saying, look at him, he's not listening to me, he's not hearing me. Well, you're not giving him any chance. So part of this is the really tough job of taking responsibility of not the original cause, but the cause that's here right now, that could there be possibly a way that you're not hearing yourself? What I mean by that is you're not hearing your inner voice to make a different decision. And that's something that she acknowledged was, I made some really poor decisions that got me into really dangerous situations. And I didn't really listen to that. When someone wanted to spend time with me and I was 11, he was 16, I didn't really listen to my inner voice telling me not to go to the concert with this guy. And so then there's this self-hatred and not really trusting your feelings and that kind of thing. So part of this is really acknowledging that, one, you probably haven't been hearing yourself, your inner voice and your safety voice or your intuition. The other thing is that, are you a good listener like you want other people to be a good listener? So then it takes us back to this concept I talked to you before about the holodeck. If you're in the holodeck of not listening, then you will not listen and you will not be listened to. So you're just in the frequency of that. It's no real fault of anyone. It's just kind of, that's where everything kind of plays out, is in that realm, in that bubble of not listening. And then the other thing is, how have you been setting yourself up not to be listened? Are you not clear with the message that you're trying to get across? Are you expressing so much details that the person can't even keep up? They're just getting exhausted with all the story and the details. But could you go into, what if you changed your story into only how you feel? It would really take down, it would filter down right down in how you feel. Now, that's where someone wants to connect with you. We all want to connect on the feeling state on a more intimate level, on a deep connection. But the details don't really do that. It keeps us up in the mind, and we say, oh yeah, I've experienced that too. Oh yeah, that person's an asshole. Yeah, oh yeah, well, I got the same story. But to really get connected and to really feel heard, you got to tell people how you feel. And it's interesting that we kind of probably know that, but we don't do that. Why? Because we're perpetuating the story of, I'm not heard. And because I'm not heard, I'm a victim. And because I'm a victim, people should not attack me. So it's kind of like that. When you stay in the victim consciousness, it's actually a form of manipulation. So, I was not heard when I was a kid, and I'm not heard now, so I need to be more aggressive and just talk over people and talk, which actually pushes away anyone's ability to hear you. So here's where, it's a good opportunity just to laugh at yourself. Holy shit, I can't believe I've actually been sabotaging when my mind has been telling me that I should do this, I should be more rah, and people don't mess with me. It's like, how's that working for you? So just laugh at yourself and realize that your mind has been telling you this, but your mind does not know the best thing to do. So let me go over my notes here and see if there's anything that I forgot. Your initial observation of not being heard was probably true, but you wrongly concluded that what you need is sourced outside of you. For a while it was, but then you got this, or your mind got the idea that everything is sourced outside of you. And that comes with money, abundance, pleasure, all those things. It's once you kind of leave that stage of your life, you're supposed to start realizing that you are internally sourced. You are sourced from within. But most of us don't realize that. This experience was turned into an identity and a story. The urgent and unfulfilled need turns into an emotionally cramped, forcing current. There's this energy in there. It's like you got to be heard. This has been causing others to resist with sharp impatience. Yes, okay, I got it. Yes, I heard this all before. Or shrink back, causing you to talk almost nonstop and forget how to listen. So they forget about listening. They're off over here. They're on their phone. They're talking to someone else. And how much of that do you do to other people? So here's some questions. Do I hear myself? Do I hear my inner voice? Do I listen to my intuition? Am I listening to others? Am I a good listener? Do I engage with them? Do I pull information out? How does that make you feel? Tell me more about that. Instead of just launching into your story that sort of relates to their story, now ask them, because what will start to happen, that whole energy stream will start to shift and people will want to know more from you. But people don't want to talk to you if you're constantly talking and not giving them a chance to weigh in. Do I speak clearly and honestly? Do you give people your honest feeling about something? And when you talk, are you talking in such a way that people are not completely confused about, you've gone this way and that way and this way, and it's hard to even hear that. Am I setting up the other person to be drowning in story and details? Got an ant on the screen here. There we go. Goodbye. Am I in the story of not being heard that I'm expecting, so I overcompensate? Do I share feeling information? All right, you ready for the solution? Here it comes. First, stop demanding you must. Stop demanding of the world that they give you everything that you're actually supposed to get from inside yourself. At least open up those channels. I'm not saying that you need to be an island amongst yourself, but you need to open up the channels so you can allow yourself to be heard. Okay? Nobody is obligated to you, and this is a hard one. No one is obligated to hear you. The world doesn't have that purpose to hear you. It's really you to hear yourself. And if people hear you and validate you and acknowledge you, great. But if they don't, that's not supposed to be the obligation. Acknowledge your past pain. So this is the part where you say, okay, now that I know this, I acknowledge the pain within of not being heard. Imagine what it feels like to be a baby, that the only thing that you're concerned about is food, getting your butt cleaned up, and getting a safe place to sleep, and maybe a little bit of tickling. If that is your whole world and one of those pieces wasn't there, acknowledge that there's some deep pain in there. And yeah, you got older and you developed some coping mechanisms to, numb those feelings and that kind of thing. But the only way to really, really heal this is to acknowledge the pain. And this doesn't mean 10 or 15 years of therapy and talking about it and how does that make you feel. It doesn't have to mean that. It just means it's a real feeling so that you could see, like, you as a younger self, if that younger self was satisfied with your acknowledgement. If it was satisfied with your acknowledgement of acknowledging the pain, then that's when it gets wiped out. That's when it gets healed and integrated. Okay, take responsibility for now. Maybe you didn't know how to take responsibility for before, but now you're a full-grown adult, you're intelligent, you're capable. Take responsibility of how things have been showing up now. Take responsibility for how you may have been self-sabotaging to get what it is that you need, being heard or whatever the thing is. You have been the cause of your current experience. And then what I mean by that is that, again, if you look at the world as your past, reflected to you from your current beliefs and your thoughts and your ideas and what you've been embodying, that's what's been projected outward and then reflected back to you. You got to take responsibility for that. Like they say, when you look in the mirror, the only way to change that frown in the mirror is not to change what's in the mirror. The only way to change what's in the mirror is to change this into a smile. And that way you get reflected back to you. That's how life works. Release victim consciousness. Victim consciousness has served you in certain ways, kept you safe, or kept people not picking on you or attacking you, but it's just been perpetuating the same thing that you've had to develop these systems for. Another part about your metaphysical realm is your throat. So this here is about speaking your truth and being heard, because you're speaking something and this is all about the throat chakra. So the things related to that will kind of open things up is a meditation to imagine that this is rotating in a counterclockwise direction and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And what usually happens to people is they start clearing their throat and coughing. And that's a good sign that you're doing something there. The other thing is the color blue, because that's related to that. The frequency of that chakra is the frequency of blue. So lapis lazuli is a good mineral stone to hold, to be with you. Wear a blue shirt. Whenever I get into like speaking engagements and things, and I'm feeling a little off about that, I'll wear the color blue. It kind of re-engages that. Become a great listener. That's what will really help things, is when you become a great listener. I know the mind says, what do you mean? I want people to listen to me. How does that make sense? No, it's not supposed to make sense in that way. It's kind of opening up that channel. When you become a great listener, you open up the channel for people to be a good listener for you. Practice more intimate, vulnerable communication that shares how you feel or how you felt and how you healed it and integrated it. You get that? Practice more intimate, vulnerable communication that shares how you feel or felt and how you healed and integrated it. See, that's the whole picture. You share with somebody how it felt. Now you've got an intimate connection with someone. But to kind of close the whole loop, that is not just hanging out there as something you want to manifest more of, share how you healed and integrated it. If you haven't healed and integrated it, why are you sharing it? Just kind of perpetuates that story. Then pass the talking stick. And so there's this concept of a talking stick. I don't have one around here, but it's just a stick. Could be nothing, or it could be something ornamented and decorated. And the idea is that when the person has the talking stick, it's their turn to talk, and no one is supposed to talk while they're talking. When they're done talking, and they're very conscious of how much time they're taking with the talking stick, and then they pass it on to the next person, and then they're done, and it's the next person. Release your dependency on external validation, but enjoy it when it comes. So you're doing something, you're saying something, you don't need the validation, just you're expressing yourself and how you feel. And then if you get some validation or some acknowledgement, awesome, but it's not really the reason why you're doing this. So let's do a little meditation on this whole thing. That was a lot of information, but we can sum it up in a meditation. Just take a deep breath. Just kind of create a little giggle inside of yourself. I can't believe I have been actually sabotaging myself to get heard. But what would that feel like? What would it feel like to really hear myself, to really acknowledge, to get these epiphanies of realization? Okay, so what is it that I want? What is it that I really need? Not just being heard. What does that all relate to? That I'm worthy, that I'm lovable, that I mean something. So what would it feel like if you had this knowing, not a belief that comes and goes, but just a real knowing that you are worthy, that you are lovable, that you matter? What if you didn't have to fight with that anymore? What if you realize that the only part of you fighting with that is the one that wants to perpetuate that? What if you asserted yourself as the captain of your ship and you said, I don't have those same ideas. I don't have those same stories as you do. I can't really relate anymore. I can remember when I had those things, but I can't really relate anymore to having that desire, that angst inside of me, that forcing current inside of me that perpetuated this. Imagine that feeling. Like you had something in your life of the need for a lot of alcohol or drugs or sex or whatever the thing is, or candy. And now you don't have that need for that candy anymore like you had before. Every once in a while, it's good. And so you can relate to that in your memory of it, but now it's not such a need anymore. That you fulfilled that desire that needed candy. Imagine the feeling of being heard. And if you have the feeling of not being heard, it's okay. This topic is not so interesting. I haven't done such a great job of explaining it. It's okay if I'm not being heard. You actually realize that I don't need anyone to hear my story. I need to hear how I'm going to shift that. And these people that are in front of me that are not hearing, they really can't help me. They're not here to help me. That's not their job. But just demanding of the world, of giving me these things, of loving me, of taking care of me, of hearing me, of protecting me, all those things are sometimes unrealistic demands. What if I took responsibility? And hold on, before you say, I have been taking responsibility, and that's why I've been so frustrated that I'm so frustrated that it's got to be my responsibility. Yes, it is your responsibility. But have you done the things that we talked about? Have you gone into the feeling? Have you pulled back and see how you feel about it? Have you been a good listener to yourself and others? If you haven't been doing those homeworks, those things, how can you expect to get what it is that you need? Is there any belief inside of you that is blocking this desire to be heard? Because if you haven't been doing the work around this and clearing those channels and clearing yourself, how can you expect to get it what it is that you need? And that's just really not the way the world works. The world works in a very much more flowing way. And if it's not working that way for you in whatever way, this way we're talking about being heard, there must be something that's in the way, and something in the subconscious or the conscious in the form of some belief or some pattern or the way that the communication is normally happening. Just because it happens one time doesn't mean it's the way that it always happens. The reason why I'm talking so firmly about this is because I know what it feels like, what it looks like to create this for myself. So I can see through the bullshit with a smile. So be honest with yourself. Really, do you really, really want to fix this? If so, there's some other, from a different perspective, there's some other stuff to work on. If your mind is telling you to do one thing, it may not be the right thing. It's like radical responsibility, radical love, radical honesty. That's it. That's all I got.